Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're taking on a challenge that sounds, well, almost impossible. We are going to try and condense an entire 18-week advanced music theory curriculum, all the mechanics, the history, the big ideas, into a single session.
It definitely sounds like a lot, but our goal here is to be really actionable. Think of this deep dive as a kind of shortcut. We want to pull out the core insights, how chords actually create motion, how those ideas get built into these huge musical structures, and then how composers just, completely change the rules over the centuries.
Right.
You're going to get the foundational knowledge that unlocks how really almost all Western music works.
So we're following the syllabus. We start with the absolute building blocks, key signatures, scales, how chords function. Let's just jump right in at the beginning with the idea that gives music its center of gravity, the key.
The key signature is fundamental. It's right there at the beginning of the music.
Yeah.
And it does two things. It defines the tonal center, the note that feels like home. And crucially, it tells you which notes are going to get sharps or flats by default through the whole piece.
And for anyone struggling to memorize the order of those sharps and flats, the source material gives us those great mnemonics. For sharps, it's F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Fat cats go down alleys eating bologna. Classic.
And for flats, it's just the reverse, B, E, A, D, G, C, F. But what's really important isn't just, memorizing the order. It's understanding how they all relate. And they're all organized spatially on the circle of fifths. That's the master chart, really.
It shows you everything. The major keys, their relative minors that share the same key signature.
Everything.
So once you've got your basic major scale and your natural minor, the theory gets pretty deep, pretty fast. You run into these essential variants. And you absolutely have to know the difference between the harmonic minor and the melodic minor scale.
This is a perfect example of theory just serving a practical function. The natural minor scale sounds good, but it's a little weak. It lacks that strong pullback to the home note, the tonic.
It doesn't feel like it has to resolve.
Exactly. So composers invented the harmonic minor scale. All they did was raise the seventh note. And that creates what's called a leading tone.
And that leading tone creates that stronger tension, that pull.
A much stronger pull into the tonic chord.
Yeah.
It's like you're creating this gravitational force that just drives the music forward.
Okay, so that's the harmonic minor. What about the melodic?
The melodic minor just adjusts that further. It raises both the sixth and seventh notes, but only on the way up.
Only when ascending.
Yeah. And then on the way down, it reverts back to the normal natural minor. It's all just to make the melody line sound smoother, less, jarring than that big leap you get in the harmonic minor. It's all about solving these practical melodic problems.
Okay, let's unpack this. Speaking of solving problems, let's talk about the smallest functional distance in music. The half step. We call the distance between any two notes an interval, right?
Right, and they have a quality, major, minor, perfect, diminished.
But with half steps, there's this one distinction that really separates, the amateur from someone who really gets it.
The difference between a diatonic half step and a chromatic half step.
Right.
And this is essential for reading and writing music correctly. A diatonic half step is one that uses two different letter names. So like C sharp up to D.
Got it. C to D. Different letters. So a chromatic half step must use the same letter name.
Precisely. C moving to C sharp.
Yeah.
It sounds like a tiny academic detail, but once you get that, you understand how harmony is built, because harmony is just stacking intervals. And that starts with a triad.
The three-note chord, it's the basic building block, and it can be major, minor, augmented, or diminished. And we flip them around using inversions.
Just changing which note is on the bottom.
First inversion, second inversion.
And when we put those triads into a key, we label them with Roman numerals. And those numerals tell us their job, their function. We call them scale degree names.
Like tonic is home, dominant is tension.
Exactly. Tonic
Yeah.
says home. Dominant is that feeling of gravity, of needing to go home. And the leading tone is like a springboard that just has to launch you back to the tonic.
That makes them feel like characters in a story, not just vocabulary.
It does. And when you're analyzing music, you always look for the primary triads first. That's the text I, V, V, all. They define the key. Everything else, the secondary triads, they just add color.
But to get beyond, simple folk songs, you have to introduce more tension.
Internal tension.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting. Composers make the music sound like it's briefly going somewhere else, but without actually changing the key. And they do that with the secondary dominant.
That is the big aha moment in harmony. It's a brilliant trick. A secondary dominant is just a dominant chord, a text-B chord, that temporarily points to a different chord instead of the tonic.
So like a text.
Text-B, exactly. It's the dominant chord of the dominant chord.
So you're setting up this tiny temporary key center for just a beat or two. It's like a musical head fake.
That's a great way to put it. It makes you feel like you've taken a quick detour before you snap right back to the main road. That added color is essential.
And to structure all of this, we need musical punctuation. That's the cadence.
Right, the endpoints. You have your strong ones. The authentic cadence. That's the definitive full stop.
The end.
The end. Then the plagal cadence, texty text, is the softer amen cadence.
And then you have the ones that leave you hanging.
The ones that create suspense. A half cadence ends on the dominant, on that texty chord, so it feels unfinished. It demands another phrase.
And the deceptive cadence. That's the classic trick.
It's my favorite.
Ugh.
You build all this tension with the dominant, and you expect it to resolve to text, but instead, it goes to the submediant. It completely subverts your expectation. It's a moment of surprise.
So the biggest move of all is a real key change, a modulation. The sources mentioned a piece that goes from D major all the way to text harp major. That's a pretty big leap.
It is. The goal isn't always to go somewhere close. Sometimes the drama is in the distance of the journey. And the key to finding that modulation is locating the pivot chord.
Bridge.
The bridge. It's a single chord that exists naturally in both keys, the old one and the new one. It makes the transition feel smooth, almost seamless.
Okay, so that's the language of harmony. Now let's talk about the grammar. How composers organize all this into big pieces using rhythm, different techniques, and texture.
Right. With rhythm, we can quickly cover time signatures, simple versus compound meter. But a key term is the upbeat.
That little pickup note or notes at the very beginning?
Yeah, it's an incomplete measure. And those first few beats are conceptually borrowed from the very last measure of the piece to keep it all rhythmically balanced.
Now we get into the composer's toolbox. How do you take one tiny idea and spin it out into a 10-minute symphony? That core idea is the motive.
That short, recurring figure, the four notes that open Beethoven's Fifth, that's a motive.
And then you develop it.
You develop it. A sequence is just repeating that motive at a different pitch. Imitation is when another voice or instrument copies the idea.
And the rhythmic stuff is so cool because you can see it on the page. Augmentation is stretching the rhythm out.
Doubling the note values, it makes the theme sound huge and slow.
And diminution is the opposite, right? Squishing it.
Having the values, making it sound twice as fast, really energetic.
These techniques build up into these big architectural structures.
For sure. You get things like a canon, which is a strict, exact copy of a theme in another voice. Or a pedal point, that's a sustained note, usually in the bass, that just holds on while all the harmonies shift and change above it. It's an anchor.
And all this feeds into the overall layering of the music, which we call texture. This is where you see that great divide between different historical periods.
A huge divide.
If you look at, say, Schumann's Kinderszenen, you see homophonic texture.
Right. One main melody with chords underneath, it's like a singer with a backup band. Clear and simple.
But then you contrast that with polyphonic texture.
Which is a completely different world. That's 2, 3, 4, or more separate melodies, all happening at the same time, all equally important. It's like several people having complex, simultaneous conversations.
And you see that everywhere in Bach.
I mean, that's Bach's signature.
That difference in texture really defines entire eras, starting with the Baroque period, 1600 to 1750. Its main trait is that dense, polyphonic texture.
What's fascinating here is how the instruments themselves shaped the style. Baroque music is full of heavy ornamentation, and improvisation was a huge part of it, guided by something called figured bass.
That's the shorthand notation, right? The numbers under the bass line.
Exactly. The composer didn't write out every single note. They wrote the bass line and then put numbers over it that told the keyboard player what chords to improvise, what to fill in.
So the performer was also a co-composer in a way.
In a very real way.
Yeah.
And dynamically, you see terrace dynamics.
Sudden changes, loud to soft.
Yeah, immediate chunks. And this wasn't just an artistic choice. It was a technical one. Instruments like the harpsichord couldn't do a gradual crescendo. They were either on or off, loud or soft.
The big forms from the Baroque are things like the Baroque dance suite.
A collection of dances, yeah. Allemande, Courante, Sarabande.
But the absolute peak of Baroque complexity has to be the fugue.
Oh, absolutely. The fugue is this incredible structure where 3 or more voices enter one by one, imitating each other. It starts with the subject, which is the main theme, then comes the answer, which is the same theme, just in a different key.
And all those opening entrances together are called the exposition.
Right. And then it gets even more complex with episodes, which are little connecting sections, and it often builds to a climax called stretto.
Stretto is where the subject entrances start to overlap, right?
They pile on top of each other, creating this incredible density and tension. And of course, J. Esbach is the undisputed master of the fugue.
So when we jump forward to the classical period, from 1750 to 1830, it's like a complete reaction to that complexity. It's all about balance and clarity.
A total aesthetic shift.
Hmm.
The music deliberately moves away from that polyphonic density and goes back to a clear homophonic texture. Cadences are obvious, the structure is clean.
And you get that signature accompaniment style, the Alberti bass.
That broken chord pattern, low, high, middle, high. It gives the music motion without cluttering up the main melody. It's light.
And the defining form of the classical period is sonata form.
Or sonata allegro form.
Yeah.
You find it in the first movement of almost every symphony, sonata, string quartet from people like Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. It's a structure built on drama.
How so?
Well, it sets up a conflict. The exposition introduces theme 1 in the home key, the tonic. Then it introduces a contrasting theme 2 in a different key, usually the dominant. So you have a key conflict right away.
Then the development section is where things get messy.
That's the chaos. It takes little fragments of those themes, breaks them apart, travels through all these distant keys. It builds maximum tension.
Until the recapitulation.
Which brings it all home. Both theme 1 and theme 2 come back, but this time, crucially, they are both in the tonic key. The conflict from the exposition is resolved. There's balance again.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We take this massive leap into modernity, the 20th and 21st centuries. Composers start feeling like that whole major-minor system, that tonality, it's been exhausted.
Yeah, they felt like there was nothing new to say in that language. That old gravitational pull of the tonic was just too strong, too predictable. So they started actively breaking the rules.
Which led to some radical new ideas, like choral harmony.
Instead of building chords with thirds, you build them with fourths. It immediately creates this open, ambiguous, sometimes metallic sound. It's not major, it's not minor, it's something else entirely.
And why pick one key when you can use several at once?
Exactly. So you get bitonality, 2 keys at the same time. And its big brother, polytonality, which is multiple keys all clashing and coexisting. It's this vibrant dissonance.
And when you take that to its logical extreme, you get atonality.
No key at all. No tonal center, no home note. And this was completely shocking at the time. It was so free that composers had to invent entirely new systems just to give it some kind of structure.
Which brings us to the most famous system, serialism.
The 12-tone row, yes. Serialism is the ultimate control mechanism.
Yeah.
It's a system where you take all 12 notes of the chromatic scale and you arrange them in a fixed order. That's your tone row.
And the whole piece is built from that one row.
The entire piece is based on manipulating that sequence mathematically. You play it backwards, you play it upside down, you transpose it. The rules are incredibly strict.
But why? Why so strict? Why not just write freely in an atonal style?
Because the main goal was to avoid a key. The human ear, our brains, were so conditioned to that major-minor system that if you just write freely, the music will almost instantly start to sound like it's in a key. It'll drift back toward a familiar center. Serialism forces you to avoid that. The rule is that no note can be repeated until all 12 have been played. It rigorously prevents that old harmonic gravity from ever taking hold.
And that, right there, connects all 18 weeks of theory for you. We started with the simplest building blocks, keys, scales, chords, and we watched composers use them to build these massive, complex architectures. From the interwoven lines of a fugue, to the drama of a sonata, and finally, to shattering tonality completely with serialism.
Understanding the theory really does reveal the hidden mechanics. It shows you the genius under the surface of the music you already listened to. You know, we talked about transposition earlier, just moving a piece to a new key, but keeping all the relationships the same.
Right. It's still the same piece, just a little higher or lower.
So think about this for a second. That major-minor tonal system, that structure, is so powerful, so ingrained in how we hear music, that composers in the early 20th century felt they had to invent serialism, this rigid, almost mathematical system, just to stop the music from constantly trying to pull itself back into a familiar key. What does that tell you about the fundamental, just the innate power of the tonal system that dominated music for 300 years?
That it's incredibly difficult to escape.
It's the water we swim in. It defines our musical expectations, even today.